Hi, and welcome to Journey Forward with Jory Rose, where you will gain insights, tools, and inspiration to get unstuck and live your best life. Jory is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a passion for helping people cultivate awareness and authenticity so they can show up fully in all aspects of their life. And now, here's Jory.
Hey everybody, welcome back to this week's episode of Journey Forward with Jory Rose. I'm happy to bring you a great conversation with relationship and intimacy expert Alexandra Stockwell. We all know that relationships are difficult, and especially the longer we're in a relationship, the more mundane or dry it can become. But Alexandra is here to tell us that does not have to be the case, and all the skills that you need to have a thriving, an intimate and passionate relationship are learnable. So be sure to stay tuned to the end of the conversation where she's going to go over the 6 different steps to have the conscious partnership that you are craving. I am so excited for this conversation because especially in times of COVID, relationships are being put to the test. So now more than ever is the time to learn how to reconnect, to reignite the passion, the intimacy, the vulnerability, and have the relationship that I know you are both craving and deserve. Enjoy the conversation. Be well. Hi, and welcome back to Journey Forward with Jory Rose. I am really looking forward to our conversation today with Alexandra Stockwell. Hello, it is so good to see you and have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here.
Well, we were chatting just for a few moments beforehand that our paths have crossed in multiple different ways. And so it just feels like you're one of these people that we're meant to know each other and meant to support each other in our work because we can't even figure out where the first place our paths have crossed from.
Yes, and I think we have kind of differences in our approach, but fundamentally want to facilitate the same kind of transformation.
Absolutely. So tell our listeners about yourself and what it is that the work that you do.
Sure. I am a physician turned relationship and intimacy expert. I was a family medicine doctor practicing in Massachusetts, and then I went on sabbatical and went on a journey, and now I coach individuals and couples who want more emotional intimacy and sensual passion. And I work with people really in all stages of relationship, and I'm particularly devoted to people in committed long-term relationships where the cultural meme is that everything just kind of gets dry and, people end up settling. And I just think that's completely unnecessary. And having a great relationship is a learnable skill.
Oh, that is exactly what John and I teach as well, that, all of these skills are learnable, but you got to have 2 people who are willing to learn it, right?
Yes, although one person can go very far in transforming the relationship on their own, ideally, and eventually it needs to be both people, but I wouldn't wait to get started if your partner is kind of not so engaged at first.
So how do you guide people? Because I get this question all the time, and it really depends on who the person I'm talking to is and how I'll respond. But this seems to be like one of those early roadblocks when the relationship needs some work. One person is likely to have some more awareness to recognize, okay, we're stuck in some capacity. The other person may not be as on board. So what would you tell people when they say, my partner isn't willing to grow or change, and I don't feel like I can do it on my own, just me. So what can I do if it's just me to get this transformation started?
It's interesting. At first I thought you were asking one question and then another, and I want to answer both.
Perfect.
Okay. So at first I thought you were saying, so what do you do when one person doesn't want to participate and the other one does? And there are 2 scenarios where I find the other partner doesn't want to participate. One is in a marriage where she hasn't been happy. This is heteronormative. She hasn't been happy. They've been married for 15, 20, 25 years, however long it's been. And between the 2 of them, she hasn't really been able to convey how challenging it is for her and how it's not working for her. And he has not been able to hear it until she's actually done and ready for divorce, because that is what then gets his attention. And so I have men reach out when his wife has already decided, I'm done. And in that situation, there's not a whole lot to do, because she's already made up her mind. And if he's the one reaching out, she's probably not going to listen to him. So in that situation, I would teach kindness, collaboration, but there isn't a whole lot to do. The situation, which is actually much more common, where there's so much that can happen, is when the woman reaches out to me. She tells me she's motivated, they have challenges, there are things she wants to transform, and he's not interested. I hear that frequently. And I've learned to really talk with her, and then to say to her, ask him if he's willing to have a 15-minute conversation with me. He's not committing to anything except that 15-minute conversation.
Seems safe enough.
Right, exactly. And literally 100% of the time, if he comes to that conversation very quickly, he's totally interested in working. And the reason that she thought he wasn't, and he hasn't said he is because it seems like it has to be on her terms, and that working together is contingent on her being right and his being wrong. And that is really not an inviting context for anyone to lean in and work. And as soon as he speaks with me, he knows that that is not my approach, that I fully honor her experience, desires, pain, yearnings, dreams, and I fully honor his desires, dreams, challenges. And that is where we start. And as soon as he feels that I'm going to be on his team too, my experience is that men love their women and are absolutely ready to do the work, just not when it is based on them being bad.
So what happens, and I love that, and I have a lot of questions around that, both things I've experienced personally and professionally in my practice. What happens when a man doesn't have the skills to know himself well enough? Because this tends to be, where men are a little less evolved in their own self-awareness to be able to name some of the emotional awareness around what they want in the relationship. I think they're pretty skilled at understanding what they want professionally and having a language around that. But I find men don't have the same language women have relationally. So how do you get a man who maybe isn't as evolved in their own emotional awareness or relational awareness to tap into that? Because that seems to be, a potential big roadblock there.
For sure. And I think the first thing that I do is I have compassion, and I have really zero judgment about that. I've been married for 24 years, and I have 4 children. My oldest is a girl, and then I have 3 boys who are now 21, 14, and 8. And I don't know how I would have answered this question 22 years ago before I had a son.
Yeah.
Because I'm a woman. And so I was never raised as a little boy, but I have seen what it's like. And of course, as women, we need to learn to honor our own desires and get in touch with our feelings. And that can feel like it's not rewarded in our culture, and quite a remarkable journey. But for a man to get in touch with his relational awareness and emotional landscape, there is a lot less positive affirmation. In fact, there's negative messaging throughout childhood. While I have 3 sons, it's my youngest, who's 8, who has been in Little League. He's the first organized sport person. The others have done other activities. And it is amazing to see how parents and grandparents yell at their 5- and 6-year-old boys, come on, it's like any leaning in to being aware through expressing how they feel is just railroaded the majority of the time. And of course there are families where this isn't what happens, this is not, but culturally, this is the phenomenon. So I think,
well, and studies actually prove that as well and back that up. There's, the studies that show under age 5, boys and girls have the same level of emotional expression. And it's shut down by age 5 for boys. And it's shut down by age 12 for girls, where girls are being socialized to be nice. And so with Carol Gilligan's work, it's, the message of, do you want to know how I feel or how I really feel? Because we're not really allowed to express how we really feel because we might not be viewed as a nice girl. So we're both socialized in ways that are shutting down our true expression.
Yes, and for the boys who have that shut down by 5, that's basically once they start interacting with anyone outside the family on a regular basis. I mean, I don't know if that'll, with more children in daycare, if that'll even be younger. But in any case, that's when school starts. And so back to these boys who 5, of course, it's not precisely on the dot. That's the average. So somewhere, let's say between 4 and 6, the messaging is unequivocal that their emotional landscape is not welcome in interactions with them. And then they're 7, 8, 9, and so on. And that same message is in there. And then here's a man in a committed relationship with a woman supposed to be aware, be expressed, be nuanced, and really comfortable in the murky emotional landscape, which he has never been rewarded for and probably been punished for. And so, yes, as women, we yearn to have a partner who really is a partner in the terrain of relationship. And men can learn quite quickly. It doesn't take, if a man is 35 or 45, it doesn't take another 35 or 45 years to learn this.
Right.
But that process is really going into that young wounding and giving different messages. So I think to say, for a woman to say she's more evolved is a little bit dangerous because that is judgmental. Mm-hmm. For a woman to say she has more practice in exploring and honoring and expressing and acting on her emotions is probably more accurate. Not that
she's been socialized to support that.
Exactly. And so I think it's really essential to honor that rather than to look at men as relative Neanderthals.
Right. They've been given different messaging around relational expectations. Yes. And unfortunately, it's not one that really supports how to show up strong as a connected partner. Because it takes away from that emotional expression or that emotional awareness that they've, like you said, been shut down for or even penalized for in other situations. So it's fascinating. Any relationship works at all.
Well, I do think that there's more positive affirmation for men to be in service in their relationships, but more and more recently, in the way that women have become empowered and sovereign, that has kind of given cultural messages that makes us hard to receive, makes it hard for us to receive to some degree. I think that also impacts relationships, because if a man is relationally less aware or emotionally less aware, but really able to be in service and be received that way, that opens up a lot of possibility, which isn't really nurtured in culture anymore. It used to be more so.
Yeah. And so how do you begin to work with couples around that? What are some of your favorite tools or frameworks for couples to be able to become closer in expressing their needs, in honoring each other's old wounds or old pains, or even these socialization differences?
Well, the first thing is any couple who I'm working with is interested in having what I describe as a conscious partnership. Mm-hmm. And the definition for me of a conscious partnership is one where both people use the relationship as a vehicle for personal transformation. And the other definition is that whatever arises can be used to build more connection. Mm-hmm. So at the point at which I'm coaching a couple, he's willing to do his work. And often, in terms of how I begin, which is your question, mm-hmm. the couple is, I'm going to use the word trapped, mostly because it's unconscious, in a relationship dynamic which reinforces her having her role and his having his role of being unaware, or whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. And in the beginning of working with couples, often, even though I'm coaching them together, it's definitely couples coaching and not individual coaching. At the beginning of the work, it's really about coaching each of them to do their own work while being witnessed by the other. So for him, I might have him, it really depends who he is and what the context is, but maybe just pay attention to how his body feels on a regular basis, or what emotions he's feeling, or maybe some simple desires he has, mm-hmm. and make it a bit of a practice. And it is often incredibly profound for his partner to witness how challenging that is. Because she mm-hmm. thinks he knows what he wants and isn't giving her what she wants. But when there's really space for him to say, he often doesn't know.
Yeah.
And so in order for him to authentically give, he needs to know what he wants to give.
Yeah. And like you said, she has to be able to receive it and honor that. You know, I always talk about it's how, you need to reinforce the behaviors you want to see. And if we keep focusing on what someone's doing wrong versus the small steps they're taking between doing something right, then it's going to be a learned behavior it's not being validated. So why bother?
Yes. And we're so open to this sort of thing when our children are young. I think once they get older, we're a little less patient about this. But, if a child takes a step and falls down, it's just delightful. We don't have any judgment that they should have just walked. And since that's the ultimate goal there, and I think it's very important to see where the steps are going, even if we don't snap our fingers and have the transformation we desire right away.
And even still, if we take those steps forward, we don't know where it's going to lead. So to have that non-attachment to what it's supposed to look like, but to allow the process to be, really that journey. Yeah. One of the ways that I like to start when I do this work with couples is talk about some of that socialization differences, that it's not your fault. This is how we've been socialized. This is how relationships were set up, with like the history of marriage being an arrangement. The more detached we become from our neighbors and our villages, and the more self-reliant we've have less community. I think especially women have expected more from their men than ever before. And so that, 150 years ago or 50 years ago, or, whatever the time period, men were doing their jobs by being good providers, and women had their community and their village for their other needs. And whether it's because of two work income households, moving away from family, I think there's more of an expectation for our partner to fulfill all these roles. So it's no wonder we're struggling, because there's been no previous generation to role model a deeper level of connection with this one person. So I think bringing this to awareness of it's not your fault. And if one of the partners is unhappy, okay, now it's your responsibility. And, even just having that awareness of some of those socialization differences, understanding how we've been role modeled in previous generations, it's like a huge relief, especially for the men. Like, oh, you mean I'm not supposed to just know how to do this? And women have been raised
to communicate differently. And as mothers, we're able to be more in tune with maybe, or have a higher attunement with someone else's unspoken needs. So biologically, it's not our fault. Socially, and having that level of awareness, you can just see, okay, I can exhale and not feel so judged. Like you were saying, it's a judgmental stance to assume something's wrong with you, that you're not there, so to speak. One of the next things I get really curious about is each person's viewpoint on growth mindset.
Oh, say more about that question.
I get this question asked a lot of, how do I know if this relationship is worth saving? How do I know if I should, bring my partner in? How do I know if they're going to be willing to do the work with me? And I always start with this question of, what's your belief around a growth mindset? If you don't believe growth and change is possible, I could give you all the best tools, all of the best compassion, create this environment. But if you fundamentally don't believe you can grow and change, or that you don't want to grow and change, then that's going to be a big roadblock. And that's something I can't convince anybody of. But if someone, so that would, them having that more fixed mindset towards growth is really challenging. I'm not in the business of convincing anybody. That's not the job I want to have. I'm not a salesperson for tools. I want to guide people who want to do the work. And, I have clients who, one person is really growth oriented, and I've seen it many times where I'm going to be making a generalization, and I apologize to those that this doesn't apply with, but I've seen more often than not the man who might say something like, this is me, love me for me. This is just who I am. Take it or leave it. And it's like, okay, that's great. And, growth is a natural part of our human experience. And I'll try to reframe it. And I sometimes keep coming up against this roadblock of, but this is just who I am. Okay, so you understand that means that she might grow and grow out of the relationship. And so you're okay if that happens. Well, this is me, love me for me. And if that's the case, that fixed mindset, it's unfortunate that demonstrates a little bit of resistance. For me, I see it as really fear-based, actually, that they're afraid to go relationally deeper from maybe wounds they might uncover, childhood wounds, family of origin wounds. So to me, it's a very self-protective stance. And if I can be curious about, I'm curious what you're resistant against, but, someone has to be willing to uncover and peel back a little bit. And for some, that's a really scary proposition.
Yeah, I recently read, I don't actually remember who the quote was from, but I read something about how long-term loving relationship means 100 funerals a day, mourning the person who was. Or maybe it wasn't about mourning the person.
Yeah, letting go of some.
Yeah, this basic idea that if you really love someone, then so much, it includes being open to so much of who they are today, not being who they are tomorrow, in a year, in 10 years. And I think we don't embrace or accept it, but we expect that when it comes to physical decline.
Yeah.
We know that if we marry a 28-year-old marathon runner that we will be needing to let go of, and so will he.
Yeah.
Marathon running at some point, right. Whether it's 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, or 90, we're going to we know that happens physically, but really in the most vibrant relationships, qualities and personal traits and ways of thinking are shed along the way as well. And it's a beautiful thing when that happens as the result of a growth mindset and not as the result of a crisis. But crises will create that too.
Yeah. Yeah, I often, when I have couples come in to work with me, and one of my questions I will ask is, Are you in love with this person sitting next to you? Or are you in love with the potential of who they can be, or even who they used to be?
Totally.
And honestly, who they actually are is the rarest of the answers. You know, especially in the beginning of a relationship, when couples come in and they're trying to change each other, so they're in love with their potential. You know, they maybe meet enough of the criteria, they check enough of the boxes, and they just want to shape and mold them into the rest. Or people have grown and changed over time, and for whatever reason is holding on to that initial partnership as the baseline for today's happiness. And so that's one of the things I love about presence and mindfulness and awareness is, okay, well, let's be with who we are right now, because this is it. This is all we got. We are who we are right now. And I can't expect the same endorphin rush and dopamine dump when we first started having sex 12 years ago, right? So how can I be with this sexual connection as of this moment, you know, as one example? Because I see a lot of comparisons to how it used to be. And when the spark has faded, they only hold that past as a baseline, or they're trying to change and mold their partner into who they want them to be. Both of which is going to take you out of connection in the moment. So it's no wonder they're having disconnect and struggles.
Yeah, and I think really feeling like you know yourself and your partner fully in the moment, that is something that is a moving target, because as we open to really feel more and be more clear in our thinking and our ability to perceive and be present, then whole new vistas open up. And I actually think this is one of the greatest pitfalls of long-term relating, is that you feel like you know your partner inside out.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, in my book, Uncompromising Intimacy, where I detail the 6 steps of conscious partnership, the very first step is to cultivate curiosity, which you've spoken about that a number of times as well.
Yes.
And there is this kind of astonishing, but not so astonishing statistic that the average couple spends less than 4 minutes a day discussing anything other than logistics and kids. And
that is an astonishing statistic. It
is. I used to be more shocked until I started coaching more couples, and now I'm less shocked by it.
Yeah.
You know, it correlates with my experience. But I think part of that, yes, there are all kinds of kind of practical reasons why that would be the case, and our lives are busy and so on and so forth. But all of that happens built on feeling like we already know our partner. But the experience of being in love is totally about curiosity. You want to know, you know, what was his first grade teacher's name, and what did she want to be when she grew up, and what kind of ice cream do you love? And like the most basic and the most grand and glorious, what was one of the biggest challenges you faced in your life? Like
dreams, fears, all those things. Yeah.
All about curiosity. And then the curiosity fades. And I think that is the first portal for couples for each individual in a couple to go through.
Yeah.
To really open up the erotic energy again.
Well, yeah, we fall into complacency and expectation. I love that idea from John Gottman's work of the love maps. And it's this, you know, same thing you're describing, is to continue to get to know your partner in the here and now. And John Gottman gives that example of the ice cream, you know, that when you were dating, you would ask all these questions and you would find out your partner's favorite flavor of ice cream, and you likely never ask it again. And so 15 years later, let's just say the husband brings home chocolate chip. Well, over the years, you know, her favorite flavor has changed. And now maybe it's peanut butter and chocolate, but they've never communicated about it. So he brings home chocolate chip. She gets pissed at him and says, "How dare you not know who I am and what my favorite flavor of ice cream is? Do you even love me?" And it's a simple matter of we grow and change over time, but we don't communicate that along the way because we don't make the time for it. And some of it seems so benign to talk about, but yet look how important it is.
Yes, and I think it is a bit of a trap, understandable though it is, to be wanting our partner to ask us the question. That part of really creating a conscious partnership is being willing to go through that excruciating experience of actually revealing yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Without resentment, without pouring acid on your partner, emotionally speaking, but just to say, you know, you really should know, but I'd like to share that this is actually what I like best now. Mm-hmm. And I understand you wouldn't have known. We never talked about it, but I want you to know that about me.
Yeah.
Anything said like that is going to be received so much more than the same information said with frustration,
absolutely,
criticism, resentment.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite books that I refer out to a lot is Oren J. Sofer's Say What You Mean.
Oh.
And his work is using the framework of nonviolent communication, in which he studied under Marshall Rosenberg. And he recognized that what was missing in that framework was mindfulness. And that before you can have a conversation that is designed to decrease defensiveness, you first have to be aware of what's arising within yourself and have those tools of what he really points to. If you can start every conversation with curiosity and compassion, you will decrease defensiveness and disconnection. Like that sums up the whole book. So those two words are ones that I will guide over and over again, because you're right, that level of reactivity will just create more distance, fear of vulnerability, and that sense of you don't want to get to know me, or whatever the story is you're believing. But yeah, curiosity and compassion can disarm almost any defense, I believe.
Yes, and that sounds very nice for communication, and it is. Mm-hmm. But it also absolutely paves the way to better sex.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's, people too, I love talking with my clients about sex because they rarely ever do. And to normalize and to give them the security around expressing themselves non-judgmentally with whatever aspect of it is. But I find that just creating the space for the vulnerability outside the bedroom deeply increases the vulnerability and connection inside the bedroom. And in fact, just yesterday I was talking with a client, and his big roadblock is they're not having sex. One of her big roadblocks is she's got no desire. And I remember when I was in couples therapy, my couples therapist said, for women, their brain is their biggest sex organ. And, it's partly around how do we understand what our partner needs in order to get our needs met in return. So if he were to understand in this situation that her need was to feel safe and connected outside the bedroom, he would get his needs met, or have a better chance of getting his needs met inside the bedroom. And that takes time and attention and sensitivity and awareness and communication to understand that process. But you're 100% right.
Yeah, I think it's really kind of hard to imagine until you've experienced how making room for vulnerable sharing leads to erotic heat. And if people haven't had sex in 6 months or 2 years or whatever, it's not instantaneous, but it definitely is the best move to thaw things.
Yeah, I love that quote. And I don't know that she originated it, but I did hear Esther Perel say it, that sex is emotion in motion. And I just think that's such a beautiful statement. And yeah, sometimes, sex is just sex and it's not about emotion, and that's fine too. But when we're talking, like you're saying, these long-term relationships that continue to need evolution and feeding the relationship to maintain connection, it's easy to see sometimes where the shortcomings are outside the bedroom. and how it's going to show up in their sex life.
Absolutely. Because what can be incredible for a one-night stand or early in dating, it's a totally different landscape after many years of partnership, and where things mean other things because of the history. And so, yes, the vulnerability and feeling like your partner is on your team rather than on the opposite team, all of these things lead to much juicier sex lives.
Absolutely. So tell me more about your book.
Okay, well, I'm really excited. It's
Congratulations, by the way. It's huge.
Thank you. And I just finished recording it on Audible, which actually is one of the most challenging things I've ever done in my professional life. I didn't expect that to be the case at all.
Wow.
But it was. And part of that is to have my voice and pacing and everything as I read the book for Audible to contain the compassion and the tenderness and the vulnerability in the stories I share about my own life and marriage and about clients. And the book itself, Uncompromising Intimacy, is really a series of tools and a description of the 6 steps to create conscious partnership. It's not that long. It's an easy read. And it's really from my heart to anyone who loves their partner and is in a committed relationship. Because as I said at the beginning of our conversation, having a fantastic relationship is a learnable skill. And there's just very straightforward description of what those skills are in the book.
I love it. Can you talk about some of the other ones? You mentioned the first one.
Yes, I'll say all 6.
Okay, wonderful.
And in a way, I think together we've talked about 5 of them without addressing them directly because they are universal truths.
Yes.
So the first one is cultivate curiosity, embrace honesty, and in the book I share how to make vulnerable communications in a way that works for everybody. Be kind, and of course, there's a lot of talk about people who are narcissistic, and that's no good for a relationship, obviously. But it's also, as you talked about in the context of talking about how girls are conditioned, being nice where you just focus on the other person's needs, that's not good either. So being kind is about honoring your own needs and honoring your partner's needs. Choose happiness, which comes after those, not before. It's not about just being a Pollyanna, but once you have the capacity, you're curious and you have the capacity to really share what is important to you, it's really important to be able to pivot on a dime and choose happiness over resentment and conflict.
Yeah. It's always, we can always reframe our lens, right?
Exactly.
If we
Exactly. Yeah, and I don't think that's the right place to start. I think the right place to start is to learn how to express what's inside. But once you have choice and you're not just holding back because you are too uncomfortable to say it, once you know you can say it, then choosing happiness becomes a real option. And then take responsibility and seek growth.
I love it. I love it.
And they're all tools that, I mean, each one of these steps is achieved through very specific tools that if you're willing to be uncomfortable and try something new, is actually easy to implement.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. And how can people find you and the book and the Audible recording? Is it all available already, or when is it available for people to access?
Well, the Kindle version is available on Amazon now, and before Valentine's Day, the print version and the Audible versions will also be available. And if you're interested in the book, you can find it at www.alexandrastockwell.com/book, or you can go directly to Amazon if you prefer. And my website is alexandrastockwell.com, and I'm on Facebook and Instagram at The Relationship Catalyst. And anyone who's listening and wants to dialogue with me, I'll be happy to respond.
Fabulous. Well, it's so wonderful running in so many similar circles.
Yes.
And getting to support each other's work. And, I feel like there's so many of us who have this huge desire to help people become happier and more connected. And the more we can support each other doing the very same work, we're just creating a better world.
I agree. And I think that is exactly what's at issue. So many of the problems in the world would either be minimized or evaporate if couples everywhere had really wonderful, juicy, nourishing relationships.
I couldn't agree more. And, it's amazing. I feel so blessed to be in the relationship I am now. And
engaged.
I just got engaged. And, after my divorce, I truly got divorced being okay not knowing where my life was going to end up. And for someone who always was scared of the unknown, I recognized it was within the unknown where my possibility for true happiness resided. And that I got to create that, and like how exciting that it wasn't just happening to me, but I got to create it. And this relationship is everything I've ever wanted in a partnership on every which level. And John and I teach these tools together. We've been doing it separately in our own careers, and we just happen to be in the same field. And just because we teach them, damn it, still means we got to use them. And sometimes, when we're stuck, I'll get kind of like, but we should know how to get out of this immediately. And no, we're still human and we're still practicing. But that's the point, is you never are there. It's constant practice and attention to the relationship. And when you feed the relationship, it's going to grow and it's going to blossom and it's going to be rich. And when you don't give it attention less than 4 minutes a day, no wonder you're going to be disconnected and unhappy, not having great sex. So yes. it's I've experienced all from, my marriage to what I have now, very, how should I say, I have experiential knowledge on all ends of the spectrum. Is how I'll phrase it. And I know it, and what you've said is so much of this are learnable skills, but it's beautiful when it's put into practice. So thank you again for the work that you're doing with couples. And for any of you guys listening, please, reach out to Alexandra. All of her links will be in the show notes. So thank you so much for your time today. And I look forward to getting a copy of your book when it comes out. And I wish you a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. I'm so happy to have journeyed forward with you.
Thank you. All right. Take care.
To continue your journey forward, find Jory Rose on Facebook and Instagram to become part of her growing community. You can also gain access to her meditations, books, online classes, or to sign up for an upcoming retreat, visit her at joryrose.com. That's JOREEROSE.com.